Should I kick things off?
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. I see some familiar faces, some new faces. I'm Reb Anderson, she, her pronouns. I'm head of education and storytelling at ACE, Action for the Climate Emergency. I'm facilitating today. Before I pass to Patrick, usually we do any announcements from folks on the call. So we can take some time to do that. And then if you have anything to share, it'd be also great if you can introduce yourself as well. And we can just, you don't have to do the hand raise thing, we can just go. No announcements, any Earth Day activities or happening?
Oh, sorry, Carolyn.
Maybe this is why we usually do raise hands.
Yeah.
Carolyn, she, her, I work for the Clay Institute. If anyone hasn't been introduced to me yet, it's a climate education and advocacy organization in Florida. We have an Earth Day festival here in Tallahassee that we're going to be at, and there's a 5K fundraiser in the main office in Miami. If anyone's in either North or South Florida. And it's not, I mean, it's all kind of intertwined and intersectional and all that, but I just want to say things are getting really bad here in Florida. For those of you who are lucky enough to not live in this part of the country, please just keep us in your thoughts and pay attention to what's going on. Yeah, in terms of mental health and climate action and having any kind of activism, it's getting pretty scary down here.
Thanks, Carolyn. I think, do you know Ashley on our team from ACE, who's in Tampa? She's definitely worked with
the Tampa team probably does.
Yes, yeah. So we have several teammates in Florida as well. And Ashley is our senior education program manager. So she goes to schools in the Tampa area. And yes, I'm just scary time to be a teacher in Florida, a science teacher in Florida who wants to teach climate among so many other issues that you can't talk about in schools in Florida anymore.
We had a professional development workshop with Orange County schools canceled because they said that there were new curriculum requirements that our program did not meet.
Hey, Carolyn, this is Frank.
Hey.
What you're talking about is very important. Is there any way that you could either share in an email to the network the kind of what did the district say specifically that said I'm assuming this is the anti-woke law?
It was very vague. It basically just said that they have other things they're focusing on with the curriculum right now, and they didn't want to confuse the teachers by introducing anything else that was new. It was very read between the lines, but like I said, I know enough to read between the lines.
I appreciate that. Why I'm asking is, as we build out the climate literacy guide, we have the forward text that was really framing text, and I'm focusing in on this exact space as one of the issues that education systems are kind of shying away from climate because of the controversy, and it's indoctrination or propaganda or brainwashing.
I'll need to confer with our legal and policy team to see if they're if sharing something that came as a private email would cause us any problems. And then I'll get back
I don't want the specific language. I'm just talking about the issue, because I do think we need to clarify that education related to climate is not propaganda or indoctrination. and why that's true. But I think we have to do a good job of addressing that head on, as opposed to leaving it fuzzy.
I think the issue wasn't necessarily, and I'm so sorry everyone that I got us all kinds of off track.
Don't
But
apologize.
I think
We
the
take like
issue
every 10
was,
minutes for this.
I think the issue was more our mention of things like frontline communities and disparate impacts of climate disasters, which again is reality, but we don't like to acknowledge reality here in Florida. So if you dare mention the fact that, you know, maybe people living at the poverty line have more to worry about than folks who are concerned about losing their second beach house, that basic, you know, that's the kind of stuff that they will target. So the science is okay, but if you veer anywhere towards what we ought to do about it, yeah, they'll reject that. Unfortunately, it's
Or
insane.
anything
But yeah,
around disparate impacts or justice.
exactly. Yeah, the word justice is like a beaming like red flag, like, you know, red flag to trigger them. It's been really difficult lately.
Thanks for sharing.
I'm
Carol.
sorry, but thank you for sharing that important insight in the unevenness of this topic. So you know, we're with you in solidarity, but also that doesn't count for very much. But you know, this is one of the values of the Clean Network, is that we actually support each other when it's hard.
I appreciate it, and like I said, I just feel like there's so much going on. Like there were like 5 different bad bills that I'm in Tallahassee, but I still can't be at the Capitol every single day to argue against them, and they don't listen to me anyway. But yeah, they're basically part of the, I mean, for example, the 6-week, the 6-week, you know, minimal to no exception abortion ban was signed at like 11:45 p.m. because they're trying to make sure that this all gets done without people paying attention. And I recognize that I'm the only one here who can do anything, and what I can do is very little. And most of y'all have little to no impact on what happens in Florida. I'm just asking you to please, like, just don't ignore it. Please let people know what's going on. Please support those of us who are fighting down here. And, you know, that's what I'm really asking. It just keep paying attention. We need eyes on this.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Thanks. Sorry to, I know I set a fantastic mood. I'm gonna shut up and let hopefully people say some nice things now.
It's an important conversation.
Yeah, it's what's happening. And then there's also the new bill, State Bill 83 in Ohio around higher education, and in higher education they teach climate change means you have to like teach information on the other side, misinformation on the other side of the issue. So it's not just Florida, but you all are way out front. Katie, I see you got your hand up.
I'm going to bring it back to announcements. Thank you for that discussion. I agree. So important. I'm sorry that I'm going to follow up that with trying to just, yeah, I raised my hand before we got into that. So if we need more time on that, we can come back, but I just wanted to warn you all. I just wanted to make the announcement that we have a webinar. We've tried to kind of schedule it around Earth Day, and it's actually on the things that Alicia and Patrick were going to talk about today and introduce to you all our new, it's actually relevant, new pages and resources on how to handle mental health aspects of climate change, especially in teaching with young people. So Alicia did a lot of work putting these pages together, and Patrick has been helping to update them recently. with some review we've had and working with teachers to review some resources to put on the pages to support educators to do that. And then and they're hosting a webinar on Thursday about this for educators specifically. So they'll talk about it today and then have the webinar on Thursday. So, you know, we all struggle with this in this space, but youth especially do. So I think it's an important topic and I'm glad we're highlighting it in Clean. So thanks all.
Thank you, Katie. Thanks for the links too. Hey, Frank, I see your hand.
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. Wow, it's hard. We like to feel we're safe here in Oregon, but I can see some of our legislators trying to pull off the same nonsense. This announcement is more of an FYI than anything else. This as far as pre Earth Day activities. Friday, I'm doing a workshop here at Portland State called Climate Action in and Outside the Classroom. And it's specifically targeted at well, basically it's a pitch to a university to position itself as a local hub for engagement with COP28. And that being said, it'll keep your fingers crossed that this pitch is actually successful. Portland State does have a President's Climate Initiative, which I'm hoping that that staff and faculty will see this idea of a community engagement hub with the next UN Climate Summit as part of its mission. Anyway, that's it.
Great, thank you, Frank. Any others? All right. Patrick, shall I hand it off to you?
Actually, I think Alicia is going to jump in to start.
Okay. Hi all. I'm not sure if I've met all of you. I've only been on a few of these Clean calls, but my name is Alicia Christensen. I work for Series Education Outreach and Support, the Clean Network. And over a year ago, came to this group to ask for ideas about strategies that people could use to help with emotions related to climate change and specifically kind of the anxiety and overwhelm and anger and emotions like that. So I wanted to kind of give an update on what we did with that feedback, and also ask the group for some ideas about how we could now share out some of the resources that we've created around that, around climate mental health. So I figured I could just share my screen and show you a little bit of the website. Let me find the right. So, and I know Katie has mentioned this, I think, and Gina has mentioned this in previous calls probably, but we ended up creating some climate mental health pages on the Clean website. And those are under the tools for teachers to use. I apologize, you might hear my daughter in the background. She's homesick today. So, so essentially, we did kind of a literature review, specifically looking at a lot of the resources that are available out there online for educators on strategies that they could use to help guide that they could use themselves, I think, for self-care, and also that they could use to help youth kind of deal with some of these climate emotions. And so we have, and we're still kind of updating the look and feel of this site, but these web pages, but we have a bunch of strategies outlined: self-care, climate justice, listening and validating feelings, encouraging and taking action, joining and creating community and connection, incorporating a trauma-informed approach, using social, emotional, and positive coping skills, moving through grief, and cultivating hope and resilience. And each of these kind of overarching strategies have sub-strategies within them. I'll go to one here. And explain a little bit about kind of the need for these strategies. And then the strategies are listed in blue here. You can click on learn more to learn more about some of the background and research related to these strategies. And then what we've done is we've gone through, because Clean is a site really that, you know, provides resources that already exist out there to others in the community. We've gone through and added resources in here for teachers that relate to these different strategies that they can use. So some of them are Clean resources. Some of them are websites, you know, specifically kind of focused on climate mental health. Some of these websites have lesson plans of their own too, to help engage students with some of these strategies. There are podcasts, there are videos on here, and like I said, there's curriculum in here too, in terms of strategies for helping support teachers as they work around climate mental health. So we basically, let me go to, we have this big poster here that you can click on, and was meant as for teachers to download if they'd like. It's you know, has kind of the bulleted points of what's involved with each of these strategies. And we also have some background information kind of about why, you know, this is an issue in the first place, and how prevalent I think a lot of these emotions are across the world. And so I would encourage all of you to, I won't show all of the pages today, but I would encourage all of you to look at these. I should also say that these have been developed with input from the Climate Mental Health Network, a professor at CU Boulder who specializes in trauma-informed responses to natural disasters. Actually, a couple people that reviewed this too and provided input and feedback. And also has been reviewed by several teachers just for usability, and we're kind of revising some of the look and feel of it right now to be a little bit, hopefully, more user-friendly for teachers to use. And then the other thing that we created was, let me go to another page here. We created a climate mental health support activities guide, and these lessons are currently being reviewed, being utilized by teachers and are in testing phase, and we're getting feedback from them, and we'll be updating them by the end of May. And these activities we designed to really be like brief activities that teachers could use in conjunction with a lesson or a unit on climate change. So these are all kind of lesson plans that are about 5 minutes to half an hour in length, that teachers can use with students, that are kind of aligned actually with some of the strategies that are outlined on our website. So the webinar that we're going to be hosting on Thursday actually is going to introduce people more to these resources. And we're going to practice a few of these lesson plans and activities. So if you're interested in attending, that's at 4 p.m. Mountain Time on this Thursday. So this is kind of what one of these lessons looks like. You know, we have defined learning objectives. We've also tried to align each of these actually with the CASEL core competencies, which basically look at the social emotional learning skills that students need. There's a lot of, I think, a lot of focus being put on the whole child now in schools and trying to support some of their social emotional learning needs. So we've tried to link kind of to that framework where we could with the activities. And like I said, they're really brief. So this one especially is pretty short. And then we've just been, you know, kind of over the last year and a half or so been trying to offer more webinars around climate mental health. We've have a recording on our website from Courtney Welton Mitchell, who is that professor I mentioned, who talks about how to support people in kind of trauma responses to natural disasters. We had a webinar earlier that had some teacher or some youth from the Climate Mental Health Network that talked about kind of the effects of climate change on their own health and how they deal with that. And then we've been kind of partnering with the Climate Mental Health Network on a lot of this stuff. So I should say the Climate Mental Health Network did review our website and also helped us develop some of these activities too. So with that, I think, you know, we just kind of wanted to share this out and show what we had done with some of your feedback, and then also open it up for maybe ideas about how we could try to get the word out about these pages and these resources.
Yeah, and I might add a little more to that.
Sure.
I've been working on kind of general outreach and engagement around clean. And what I've been finding a lot is that there's a lot of folks who are in this space who are familiar with the collection and how to search the collection, how to access the resources that are cataloged there. But as far as these teacher support resources, we have quite a few on, you know, starting with the teaching climate, teaching energy, and then getting more specific to the culturally relevant teaching resources, and now this new climate mental health guides. And they're tucked back into the website a bit. And so much good work went into this. And I hope you explore these resources and see how much is there and how thoughtful the process was in creating them. But it's like, okay, what is needed to really ensure that these are visible and used moving forward?
Yeah, thanks, Patrick.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
Hear your birds. Does this, I guess I should probably dig into it and see, to what extent does this cover sort of like action and advocacy in terms of, you know, in terms of mental health and feeling like, you know, students have agency?
Yeah, one of the strategies actually is about taking action and advocacy. The advocacy, I think, is actually weaved through a couple of the different strategies, but taking action is one of the strategies. And so there's a bunch of information and resources on that page. That's actually one of the larger pages with more information on it.
Cool. Not to be self-aggrandizing. I did about a year and a half ago, I did put a paper in the Florida Science Teacher Journal, basically about climate anxiety and and advocacy and that helping students. So I'm really glad to see that's incorporated. And I would say that in terms of getting the word out, I can send this along to FAST, which is Florida Association of Science Teachers. If you have connections over at NSTA, National Science Teaching Association, and then sort of their state or NAAEE, North American Association of Environmental Educators, a lot of different people get their sort of newsletters and, pay attention to their resources. So that would sort of be my recommendation / contribution is reach out to those other organizations that compile and review resources. A lot of, like I said, a lot of educators, trust them in terms of what they vet and recommend.
Carrie?
So I want to just start by saying that this is something that the teachers who I work with ask for. As most recent as last week, I had a teacher say, we've been using your climate change lesson sets, and we know that you guys don't end things on a particularly negative note at any point, but we are looking for ways to support our students who are struggling with this idea that the future is going to look very different from what they're currently experiencing and what people in the past have experienced. And so thank you for putting this together, first of all. This is a wonderful resource, and I expect that it will be very well utilized by the teachers that we work with. And I just want to echo what Carolyn just said, which is it might be possible to write a kind of boilerplate, almost like a STEM teaching tool resource that you can then ask the different state organizations to publish in their newsletters, along with resources like the links to these different resources and tips on navigating them. And that way it's not just, hey, here's this resource, please share it with your teachers, but hey, we've created this, we want to share some information with your teachers, we know that they're struggling with this. Here's an article that we're asking you to very kindly include in your next newsletter. And that way it's more than just, can you do us a favor, and more, we want to help you and we want to help your teachers.
Thank you. That's a great idea. I love that.
And it doesn't have to, you can make it regionally specific just by making a few tweaks, but I'm sure if you just write something very general and then just make a few tweaks depending on what state you're working with, I think it would be very well received.
Great. Thanks so much for that feedback. Yeah, that's a great idea. Frank.
I'm going to open this right now.
Yeah, couple of things here. An experience I have with my own students, but that leads to a question. And one thing I do with my own students in my sophomore inquiry is to always give them in a weekly summary a couple of giveaway questions, if you will. And these are usually along the lines of what questions do you have about what we've covered in reading this week or what we've covered in the lecture. And because it's such a broad open question, that's where I get the existential angst types of questions like, are we hosed yet? But one of the really common questions that I get is, how do we go about, why are there so many people who continue to deny the reality of the situation, and how do we talk to them? And so there's a lot. So I think when we talk about the, I'm definitely interested in seeing what you folks have put together. But one of the things I'm really curious about is how does the question of climate mental health take into account the issue of dealing with deniers? And I would spin that into a question here, which is, how do we deal with the folks who say the only reason that kids, well, I'll say kids, at this point are feeling this anxiety is because they're being propagandized.
Yeah, that's a great point. Are there other thoughts about that?
Hey, Frank, this is the other Frank, and sorry I didn't raise my hand because I'm in a car, hands-free, of course. But I think you raise a couple key points there, and I would assume the taking action page, I may have to go back and read it carefully, but I would think because this issue is moved into the social, it's not a scientific issue, it's a social issue. And so the move to say, the reason why kids are hearing about this is because we're trying to do propaganda is most ironic, because the reason why they don't want to hear it is propaganda. This is what I was getting to before about what is propaganda and when is it, why is it, who uses it, and who is using it relative to mental health, because I imagine the social running up against people who just continue to deny this either intentionally or through omission is challenging, because it frustrates conversations and exacerbates anxiety and delays action. And that just the connection of all those points, it's complicated, but definitely aligned and relevant, I would imagine. So, you know, Patrick and Alicia, how that fits inside this, it's an interesting question. But, you know, I guess all of us should probably read it and see how that feels. Would you be open to, if we see something that is like there's a natural connection or there's another piece, is this iterative, or is this kind of going to be set for now?
Definitely iterative. So yeah, I mean, if you have ideas how to bring this idea of propaganda in there, the introductory page, can you stop for a second? Thank you. The introductory page, talks about kind of why students have or talks a little bit about why some of these students have these emotions, but doesn't really go into propaganda. There's a lot of, it talks a little bit about the fact that youth are angry at their governments and angry at leadership for, not doing enough. So it would be interesting, I think, to also include some information about, that how students are reacting to the propaganda that's out there as well. We touch a little bit on people that we touch a little bit on how to I guess think about climate deniers in the grief section, because if you look at the grief section, actually one of the stages is kind of denial that this is happening, and so it's really recognizing that too is kind of a stage of grief. This idea that I'm going to deny this because if I accept the reality of what's going to actually happen and the changes that are going to happen, it's going to be too overwhelming. But it'd be interesting to think further about how strategies about how to help kind of with this propaganda. And I don't know if it would be part of this or if we'd want to make a new page. I don't know. Amber, your thoughts? Amber, do you have thoughts? Oh, we can't hear you.
I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry. My question is for after you share your thoughts. I don't want to throw us off.
After the discussion about these pages, like it's on a separate topic, Amber, or?
Oh, yeah. So I had a question about, first of all, for those who don't know me, I'm Amber. I'm very new to this. I keep saying this is a learning space. So I'm asking these questions based on what I think I understand. I'm I'm executive member of the Baltimore Green Justice Workers Co-op. And I'm here in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, acting as a program manager for some global, to assess some global things globally here in Africa. And my question is, first of all, these resources are very wonderful and valuable. It's lacking here, this kind of education. But when I think about the educational system here and the curriculums here, my question is, how are you able to gauge or measure or assess the need for mental health resources in communities whose climate literacy and awareness are either null and void or very low, particularly for those who are disproportionately their main focus or, mental health anxieties are surrounded about, basic life needs. I don't think that it should compete with it. I think that it should accompany in it. At least that's what I see here. And I would like to, as we start the work, to look at how environmental injustice affects food, affects, mental health, and through those portals, I want to know, how are you able to gauge these needs? Or is there any way these activities can also be used to collect this kind of information, to collect this data? Do you have any resources to share or anywhere to point me to, if not today, but maybe later on in an email?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, and a great, I don't know. Well, I think we'll have to talk more about that. I don't know that I have an immediate response to that, and maybe ideas from the rest of the people on this call would be helpful too.
Yeah, because what I'm thinking too is not just, here in Africa, obviously in America too, we're talking about the same communities. How do you gauge for these activities? How are you able to, I guess, encourage participation on these needs? So for what I'm understanding in education is that it's a hub where a lot, right? So whenever we're dealing with whatever the community needs, whatever the society needs, it's important that we start with the school system so that it can kind of, go in many different directions and impact different sub-communities from there. It starts with the children, it starts with the schools. But when you have children who are in poor communities, or they're just not having these conversations in their household, things like that, how do you imagine that these activities all
Frank and Carolyn, do you have comments on this particular topic, or did you have other topics you want to jump to? Because I can try to say something to this, but
It was about this.
all right, yeah, you
but
two go ahead.
I'm not sure if Amber can hear us right now. It seems like your
She
internet
might have broken up a little.
Yeah.
I can hear.
Okay. So we do a lot of work with marginalized communities within Florida, and a lot of what we do, we call it connecting the dots about how everything is connected to the climate crisis and meeting people where they are. So for example, especially in bigger cities, people care a lot about air quality. And then we can talk about things like how urban heat islands and unsustainable ways of development contribute to climate issues and also trap air pollution close to the ground. When people are experiencing, heat waves where they're not able to get air conditioning, like in Florida, one of the top killers of elderly folks is heat stroke, heat exhaustion. Those heat waves come from increased atmospheric temperatures, increased natural disasters, crop failures. So basically we start with sort of a listening session saying, what are the things that are impacting you most? Like what problems are you having? And then because this is a threat multiplier and every single issue that society has is made worse by an unstable climate, we really emphasize that. And so we start off with asking, and then we move over to making those connections. And so, I mean, that works. I imagine that'll work well in Baltimore as it does in Miami. If the cultural context for Tanzania is different, then I'm definitely, happy to learn more about that. But yeah, it's just that just approaching it first as what are you facing, and then explaining how this underlying issue is, either causing or exacerbating all of it.
Frank, is yours on a different topic, or did you want to?
Is this Frank N or Frank G?
Sorry, Frank G.
Okay, I do have a comment, but it's on this topic, but I'll let Frank G go first.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I do have a comment on the topic, but it sort of birdwalks back to my question. So maybe Frank, you should go, and then I'll wait.
Okay.
Sure. Amber, one thing I'm imagining for young people or people who climate hasn't shown up as an issue of concern or focus, and really understanding the severity of the issue, that one of the advantages of these resources is as they do become aware, and unfortunately that is an eventuality for all humans on the planet. As soon as you become aware, the chances of shifting to anxiety are very high. So if you go from, I don't even know what you're talking about, to, oh, this is what this is, I would think having this resource at that time is crucial, because it's kind of like the stages of grief. I would imagine before there's even a pre-grief stage of unaware that there's an issue to be grieving about. So I would think that this is a pre for
Frank, we lost you at the end there. Before you go, Frank G, I just wanted to say something kind of similar to what Carolyn was saying, which is, how I've dealt with this in the past. I think this has come up in another group I'm a part of, which is the Rising Voices Network. It's a group trying to connect climate science with Indigenous science and knowledge. And, we have working groups in the meeting for that talk about this idea of like, how do we deal with climate change on like reservations, for example, when we're dealing with issues like severe health issues of our people, and food and all of that, access to food, issues around drinking and drugs, and just some of these like just general health issues that they're dealing with. And some of the conversations there have come around to what Carolyn was saying of, trying to, like, we need to deal with those base issues, but we also need to recognize sometimes those base issues can be exacerbated by things like climate change. And in that space, they talk a lot about like food sovereignty as being, a really important aspect for tribal communities, as well as a solution to climate change, right? And so there's a lot of these things that I think you can try to bring the two together, but you do have to be careful when you talk to people and make sure that you're not disregarding some of those base fears, base issues, challenges that people are facing, but also trying to help people recognize that, like, you know, solutions to climate change can also be helpful with some of these other, you know, challenges that communities face. Pollution, you know, and we talk about this with environmental justice, and I think that's one of the reasons, you know, that, you know, one of the top strategies that we included on these pages, or that Alicia really included on these pages, was the idea of justice, you know, because like we see this in poor communities all the time, you know, where they have much worse health impacts because of pollution. And, you know, sometimes you don't have to connect pollution to climate, but you certainly can. Fossil fuels create pollution, right? So there's a lot of connections I think that you can make here. And there are other resources within the Clean Collection too that address things like food, you know, gardening, like school gardens and things like, you know, so I think there are ways you can kind of connect some of those teaching resources with the resource here on sort of helping educators address these issues. So I'll just mention that. And Frank, you can take it from me now.
Yeah. I really appreciate what Amber brought up here, because there's a question here, which is, when we talk about these climate mental health resources, who are they aimed at? And what are the, what are the assumptions that are made about the kids, and where they come from, et cetera. And I was thinking back to the issue that I brought up in terms of this issue of propaganda or not. And one of the big things that I'm thinking back to my own background as a working class kid coming out of a somewhat conservative suburban/rural community. And there's this issue of the kind of dissonance that this kind of information creates just within a family structure. It's kind of like, if we're going to expect kids to wrestle with these issues, how do we help them be able to survive at home when their family is saying, "Oh, that's garbage," or "You're crazy for thinking that," or buying any of that?
Go. I don't know if I'm still moderating or not, because Patrick also left, but I'll call on myself here because I have my hand up. This is something that I think most of the folks on this call know that ACE has done quite a bit of work on over the past couple of years. We had our Let's Talk About It campaign that I think quite a few of you on this call were part of. Alicia, were you part of that? Okay, so you're familiar with that also. And I guess I just want to provide a note of context on one of the things we learned from that campaign, that like a little bit of a side issue, which was that like something that we found on our fundraising and development team was that funders got very excited about funding a campaign or work around climate and mental health, particularly corporate funders. And like, we had to have a really hard conversation about like why that was. And I think we came to face some hard truths around that, like, this issue felt a lot safer to some of our funders than some of our actually more action, activism, advocacy oriented work. And so I think I'm moving into like ACE's other area of work. You know, we do a lot of education, but we also do advocacy. And like, in no way do I want to minimize the value of working on climate and mental health. And like on the education side, I think it's so valuable and important. I guess I just want to like insert a little note of warning that like where we have moved to is like incorporating sort of mental health throughout our work in education and in our advocacy and activism as well, but we aren't specifically focusing on it as like a campaign pillar anymore, because we felt a little bit that we were like capitulating to some of these corporate funders that were like, oh yeah, we want to fund this like mental health work, because they didn't feel comfortable actually supporting our advocacy work. And it like, so I just want to like, I guess this is a lesson that we have learned in the past few years of doing this work, and I just wanted to share that here. And I'd be curious to hear if anyone else has experienced that or has thought about that.
You know, Rep, this is Frank. Is there a hand up? I'm sorry, I can't see anything.
Oh, go ahead.
So you raise a really interesting point, especially in the guide where it bridges. I think it was you were saying that it's in the grief one where the action aspect. So like I don't think you would. I couldn't imagine as an educator you working with young people and trauma-informed pedagogy and then not transitioning to education for action aspects, right? Like this is a piece of something, not its own standalone thing.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean, Reb?
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
I could, and I don't know how intentional, like this is one guide of, I think 38. You know, I would imagine you wouldn't want, and I think, do we deal with the concern you just raised skillfully and the bridge to action and the other related guides that are really focused on action? We have them, but I think it's a fair question to see if we've done that bridging well.
Yeah, because it does have a big part of this is around like activism as one of the strategies to address climate grief. Oh, I think we lost Carolyn, who also was going to have a comment, because I know Cleo does do advocacy as well. Yeah, thanks, Frank. I know we're close to time here, and was there another topic that someone on the call had wanted to bring up? No.
Well, I just spoke, so this is Frank Neapold over at NOAA again. I do want to highlight that we had our first climate literacy update listening session on Monday. It was incredibly interesting and rewarding. We have a whole series of them, some private, some meaning that a host is doing it with a group that is not open to the public, and some of them are open listening sessions. We're also building more with partners around different topics like workforce, justice, indigenous knowledge, and youth. But you know, I just want to reemphasize that the more contributions we have in this process, either through the Federal Register as an individual contribution through May 31st or as an organizational listening session, the more of these we have, the more kind of forward postured we can be. And I think this conversation we just had so many gems that really capture where the field is now, as opposed to where we were in 2007, 8, or 9, which this conversation would not have happened back then. Full stop, right?
Yeah.
maybe inklings of it, but I just invite you all to participate either through networks, partners, or yourselves in this wider process. So
Hey, Frank,
it's an open request. Yeah, go ahead.
I talked with Haley last week, and I know she's working on this also.
She is.
I would love to give our youth advisory board a chance to give feedback. I don't know if you all be willing to do their meeting. They meet once a month, and their next meeting is May 14th. I don't know if
We could make it happen. Board, we could absolutely do a, we have one later today with Smithsonian Youth Council. So we're already doing that. So it would be lovely and relevant to have that. So let's just work it through on the side. And this is an open offer to any organization, you know, of any form, right? Higher education, place-based education, informal education, you know, community engagement, you name it, right? So Reb, just let's work it through and we can put it on the schedule and make it happen.
awesome. Okay, should I email Haley?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I use the last 2 minutes here to just say that Alicia's putting on this webinar on Thursday, but also we don't have a link yet because we're still working on getting the registration and all of that set up. But on May, is it 17th, Alicia? Yeah, May 17th, we're hosting a film screening of a film that the Climate Mental Health Network put together of their youth talking about mental health issues around climate change. And then we're going to have a panel discussion as well with some folks, including one of the mental health leaders from the mental health network, the youth leaders. So I just wanted to put that all on your radar. We will send an email to the clean email list when we have that to share around, but that's a little bit targeted more towards folks from the clean network than our usual educator audiences for our webinars. And you know, other folks who have interest in climate education and climate communication work, we're going to share it widely, but I just wanted to let you all know that we're kind of building that a little bit more for you. and others like you.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Katie. And
Thanks
Deb,
everyone for this conversation.
Yeah, thanks Alicia for joining. Thanks Journey for being with us too.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.